So, in this paper today, I'll be looking at two exhibitions of contemporary British art that were organised in collaboration with the London-based Anglo-German Club during the early 1930s, and you can see there specifically between 1931 and 34. Significantly, these two exhibitions took place less than 12 months either side of Hitler becoming Chancellor of Germany in January 1933, and I think that is significant when thinking about perhaps the changes of policy that took place within the Anglo-German Club in this short period. Now, the Anglo-German Club was founded in the summer of 1931 by Marc Nevin Dumont, with the Viscount d'Abernon, the former ambassador to Berlin, acting as the club's president. As an early pamphlet set out, the main objects of the Anglo-German Club were as follows: to foster friendship and understanding between the British and German nationals, and to provide a non-political meeting place for those interested in both countries, to establish a centre for Germans visiting London and to make them feel at home in this country, to bring Britons who are interested in Germany into contact with Germans, to furnish British members with introductions, references and assistance when visiting Germany, and finally to enable British members travelling abroad to avail themselves of the amenities of the German social and sports clubs, and to make similar arrangements with English country clubs for German members. As the pamphlet proudly states, coming at a time when the desire to draw together again was becoming apparent both in England and Germany, the idea of the Anglo-German Club was enthusiastically received. At the end of the first 6 months of its existence, the club already counted 200 members. This would rise to 700 members by 1933. It was stated that in fact the influx was so rapid that no time could be lost in securing a meeting place. Temporary accommodation was therefore secured until the club moved to its own premises at 6 Carlton Gardens. And then you can see 6 Carlton Gardens on the right, and this is of course just over the road from the German embassy that we've just heard so much about, so within a stone's throw. At 6 Carlton Gardens, a wide range of facilities were provided for its members, including accommodation and meeting rooms, a dining room serving German food, a basement bar serving cold German beer, as the adverts said, and snacks, a library and writing room where Austrian, Swiss and German newspapers were available, and the Anglo-German Club also published its own review, the Anglo-German Club Review. The club also organised regular business, social and cultural events, including the two exhibitions of contemporary British art that I wish to discuss. The first of these exhibitions, entitled New English Art, was organised in collaboration with the German authorities in Hamburg and opened at the Hamburg Kunstverein in June 1932. The second, an exhibition of contemporary British art, opened in London only 18 months later, in December 1933, and this was held at the home of the Anglo-German Club. Now, my own initial awareness of both exhibitions, this is partly a disclaimer on my behalf, but my own initial awareness of both exhibitions came via my research for the Ben Nicholson catalogue resume. And it was really the incentive to look more into these exhibitions. I knew Nicholson had been involved with this show, and when the call for papers was put out for this conference and I saw those words Anglo-German, I thought this is a good opportunity to make sure I do some research on it. So this is the results of my research. Now, Nicholson exhibited works in both of the exhibitions, and what initially caught my attention regarding the later exhibition, so the one at the Anglo-German Club, was that Nicholson, along with his co-exhibitors, Henry Moore, Barbara Hepworth, Paul Nash and Edward Wadsworth, were specifically listed as a member of the Unit 1 group, a factor that signalled the exhibition's bit part in the concerted effort by a number of individuals, including Nicholson, to establish a recognisable modern art movement in London at this moment. Now, as I'm sure you're going to guess, a leading spokesperson for this group was the poet and critic Herbert Reed, a near neighbour and close friend of many of the Unit 1 artists, as well as editor of the Unit 1 publication. In the months prior to the opening of the 1933 Anglo-German Club exhibition, Reed had published his seminal book on modern art, entitled Art Now. Now, Art Now was Reed's attempt to provide a critical model for understanding developments in art that had taken place during the first 2 decades of the 20th century, and as such acted as a groundbreaking book in introducing the British readership to the works of the German expressionists, to the cubists, surrealists, and a range of contemporary abstract and modern artists. Now, unlike previous writers on modern art in England, such as Roger Fry, who tended to be Franco-centric in their positioning, in building his own theoretical position, as we did here yesterday in Professor Carancola's paper and also in Richard Calf-Caress's paper, Reid specifically looked towards Germany and Northern European sort of examples in structuring his ideas, and in particular the theories of Wilhelm Boehringer. Now, the chapter structure and contents of the book was based on a series of lectures that Reid presented over the previous 2 years, including a number that were presented at the Courtauld Institute. So he did present them and also in Bangor in Wales and also in London at the Courtauld Institute. So I think that's important. He wasn't just in Edinburgh presenting this material. The manuscript appears to have been completed for the book during the summer of 1933. And it was at this stage that Reid had written the preface, the focus of which, by Reid's own admission, had not been apparent when he had written the contents of the book, namely the political and cultural events that were now taking place in Germany. With a strong sense of sadness, Reid notes in the preface that before the coming to power of the present dictatorship in Germany, modern art had enjoyed an esteem unequalled in any other part of Europe, with most towns of any importance having a representative collection of modern art, with museums, galleries and art schools under the directorship of informed individuals. However, as he says, with the rise of the Nazi Party, artists and museum directors had been dismissed, and modern painters relegated to cellars or worse. What Reid recognised to be, quote, the result of a monstrous illogicality which identified modernism in art with communism in politics. Reid continues, and this is also in the preface, a few modern artists may be communists. However, as he notes, some are undoubtedly Jews, a fact which may have more to do with the matter than the German politicians would admit. Now, Reid's concern and distress at the current state of affairs in Germany was further confirmed in the bold dedication printed in the opening pages of Art Now to the art historian Max Seyerland. As Reid was fully aware, Seyerland had recently been forced, under the restoration of the professional civil service, from his post as director of the Hamburg Museum of Arts and Crafts, as well as losing his chair at Hamburg University due to his commitment to modern art. I think it is just important to realise, so this is Reid putting this book together in the summer of 1933. Another member of the Hamburg art establishment who also left his post in the summer of 1933, although this appears to have been a resignation, was Hildebrand Gerlich. Gerlich had been curator and managing director of the Hamburg Kunstverein, and like Seyerland, was an advocate of modern art, actively promoting and exhibiting the works of, among others, Kathy Kollwitz, Emil Nold, and Kandinsky. Significantly, it was under his directorship that the exhibition of New English art had been organised in collaboration with the Anglo-German Club at the Kunstverein in June the previous year. In organising the New English Art Show, Gerlich appears to have had a hands-on approach to gathering material to be exhibited, and made at least one visit to London at this time to meet artists and dealers and to collect works of art. In June 1932, Ben Nicholson, writing to his first wife, the artist Winifred, would note, Dr. Gerlich from Hamburg came to select my paintings Wednesday evening, and I told him to go and see your work at the Leicester Galleries, and I gave him three photos of your things that may be used for reproduction. I hope that's all right. I also told him about Francis Hodgkins, etc. Will you drop a line to Brown at the Leicester Galleries and say that you'd like Gerlich to have some things for Hamburg? If he likes them, he took 6 of mine. When Gerlich arrived, he seemed very excited to have found works of art like mine and Harry's in England. Yesterday, a photographer took about 15 photos of me and my works for possible reproduction in Germany. I think the show is worth you taking the trouble about, as it may go on to Berlin afterwards. And where Ben Nicholson refers to Harry there, he's talking about Henry Moore. So Gerlich had obviously been to Henry Moore's studio in Hampstead on the same trip in June 1932. Now, much to Nicholson's disappointment, only 2 of his works were finally shown in the exhibition in Hamburg. Among the other artists included were Mark Gertler, Duncan Grant, Barbara Hepworth, Stanley Spencer, as well as Henry Moore and Winifred Nicholson. As was proudly noted at the time in the publicity surrounding the exhibition, when it opened in June 1932, the New English Art Exhibition was the first exhibition of modern British art to be held in Germany since the First World War. Now, alongside the obvious role played by Gurlitt, the selection committee for the exhibition included a number of notable names, among them J.B. Manson, the director of the Tate, the art critic of the Times, Charles Marriott, R.H. Wilinski, who also wrote the catalogue introduction, and importantly, Herbert Reed. It is also known that Max Ehrling, at this time stood in his post at the Hamburg Museum of Arts and Crafts, lent a number of works, including this drawing by Henry Moore. In his introduction to the catalogue, Wilinski wrote, "It is usually assumed that owing to the rapidity of modern communications at the disposal of the modern press, everyone knows what is happening everywhere, 5 minutes after it happens. But in fact, we know astonishingly little of what is happening around us, But in fact, we know astonishingly little of what is happening around us, because 9/10 of the press in all countries records only A, what the proprietors of the papers want the readers to believe, and B, what the proprietors think the readers want to read. As a result, the English people, as a whole, know next to nothing about post-war Germany, and the German people, I imagine, know next to nothing about post-war England. The present exhibition is an attempt to provide information in one field." Now, whilst alluding to the political bias of the press, Wilinski's text was very much in line with the intentions behind the formation of the Anglo-German Club, namely the fostering of understanding between the people of Britain and Germany. As Ben Nicholson observed in a later letter, the Hamburg exhibition appears to have been a great success, and it did result in the show travelling on to Munich and Berlin. The surprise and enthusiasm with which it was met on the continent also encouraged the directors and committee of the Anglo-German Club to organise a second exhibition of contemporary British art, this time in London. And it was also planned that this would be followed by an exhibition of recent German art, also at the Anglo-German Club venue in London, at a later date, so sometime perhaps into 1934. Now, the two individuals assigned the task of organising the Anglo-German Club exhibition were Arthur Lethaynes and John McNamara. Lethaynes was a painter and sculptor who often referred to himself as an English surrealist. In the 1920s, Lethaynes had lived in Paris with his partner Cedric Morris, where they'd become part of an artistic community that included Marcel Duchamp, Man Ray, Ernest Hemingway, and Nancy Cunard, among others. Now, less is known about McNamara. An officer in the army, in 1935, McNamara would be elected Conservative MP for Chelmsford. It appears likely that McNamara's involvement in the organisation of the British Art Exhibition was in fact more due to him wishing to establish relationships with influential members of the Anglo-German Club than it was due to his interest in contemporary art. In October 1933, McNamara wrote to Lethaynes, quote, "I have clinched with the Anglo-German Club and think I shall find it very interesting. The club has refused subsidies from both governments, so it wishes to be independent, but it works in conjunction with both embassies. The other two directors are the Master of Sempill and Neville Dumont, who is the cousin of Vice-Chancellor von Papen. Dumont and I are going to Berlin next month to meet with von Papen and others, which should be interesting." 2 weeks later, McNamara wrote to Lethaynes again. "We are very busy arranging my Berlin visit. You would think I was an ambassador, the trouble that is being taken. The Foreign Office and the Embassy, etc. I am giving some lectures there." And at the end of that letter, it's not particularly legible, but it seems to say in McNamara's letter to Lethaynes, he has to go now because he's just heading off to interview Mosley's right-hand man. And I've not been able to find out who he's actually referring to, but it's just a footnote there. Although it's not clear what the subject of McNamara's lectures were to be, during his visit to Berlin, McNamara also appears to have been looking to locate artworks, possibly pieces for inclusion in the planned exhibition of recent German art that was to be held at the Anglo-German Club at a planned later date. One of the gallerists that McNamara was looking to meet was the Jewish art dealer Alfred Fleckheim. However, this was unsuccessful, as McNamara would write to Lethaynes from Berlin. "I've been unable to get in touch with him. His place is apparently not in the Unter den Linden. Not now, anyway. And though I have asked other picture dealers, no one seems to have heard of him. Now, following the siege of his art collection and gallery stock and the Aryanisation of his gallery, Fleckheim had in fact fled Germany the previous month, first heading to Paris to make contact with his previous business partner, Daniel Henri Kahnweiler, before travelling on to London. Now, whether McNamara had been misinformed about Fleckheim, or whether he was being disingenuous in his correspondence with Let Haynes, in Berlin, McNamara appears to have established a somewhat partisan view of the future for modern artists in Germany. Writing to Let Haynes on the 18th of November from Berlin, McNamara noted, "I have discussed art with many people. Art is going to be allowed to develop itself as in other countries, and is definitely, underlined, going to be encouraged. If certain well-known people have occasionally diatribed against certain forms of modern art, it is because they are expressing a personal opinion, as do well-known people in other countries occasionally. But art is not being tampered with officially, except in cases of gross immorality. If artists have been in a few cases turned out, it is because they have been nuisances politically or morally, a fact they keep to themselves when in other countries. Providing they confine their attentions to art, which, as I say, is allowed to develop along its own lines, they are encouraged in every way." Now, while McNamara appeared unwilling to recognise it, the persecutions that were taking place in Germany were having an effect on the organisation of the exhibition of contemporary art at the Anglo-German Club. On the 7th of December, Let Haynes received a letter from one of the artists he was hoping to include in the show, the sculptor Jacob Epstein. Epstein wrote to Let Haynes, "I am quite unable," again underlined, "I find to exhibit at 6 Carlton Gardens, and most certainly I do not wish to have any works of mine borrowed to exhibit there." Epstein was not alone in not wishing to be associated with an exhibition aligned with the Anglo-German Club. On the 8th of December, Let Haynes felt obliged to write to the Bloomsbury artist Duncan Grant, an artist whose work had been well represented in the earlier Hamburg show. Let Haynes writes to Grant, "I cannot help but be hurt by the attitude taken by you and some of your friends towards the exhibition for which I am responsible. And I can only inform you that my activities are the reverse of what I gather you imagine them to be. Your boycott of the exhibition can only serve to help jeopardise the success of an ideal which I believe to be important to both of us, that of Pacific international and interracial relations. I append a list of those associated with the affairs of this non-political organisation, namely the Anglo-German Club. I append to A, the Hamburg Art Exhibition catalogue, and B, the Social Club Circular." Now, Let Haynes concludes in his letter to Duncan Grant, the non-Nazi and Jewish elements of the club outnumber any Hitlerite section more than 100 to 1, and very many emigres have found refuge here. He adds in brackets that actually Alfred Fleckheim is sat with him at that very moment. When the show opened the following week, on the 14th of December, works by neither Epstein or Grant were included. In the months that followed the exhibition of contemporary British art, plans for the proposed exhibition of German art seem to have been abandoned. An exhibition of French art was mooted, however this also appears not to have taken place. In fact, by June 1934, the explicit German association of the club itself appears to have become problematic. In a letter dated the 15th of June 1934, the club secretary, Lieutenant Colonel Corson, wrote to the club's members, and quote, "During the 3 years of its existence, the Anglo-German Club has done much valuable work in creating goodwill and understanding between nationals of Great Britain and German-speaking countries. It is now felt by a majority of the members that the foundations of the club are so well laid that its scope can be considerably enlarged and its aims extended to other countries. Obviously, the present name of the club is too restricted for the new venture. Lord Davenant, on being approached, most kindly consented to lend his name to the club. The management have therefore decided to change the name to the Davenant Club. The Davenant Club will link up with other clubs in Europe and America, and mutual hospitality arrangements will be made in addition to those already existing." The letter concludes, "It is particularly necessary to stress that the club's attitude towards German-speaking countries remains as friendly as before, and that no change of policy is intended." Just to conclude, I just wanted to look at what happened to a number of those individuals involved in these exhibitions in the Anglo-German Club at varying degrees. Now, Max Seyland, as some of you, or many of you may know, died on New Year's Day in 1934. Alfred Fleckheim died of septicemia in London in March 1937. In 1937, with Cedric Morris, Arthur Lehane founded the East Anglian School of Painting and Drawing, which would later count among its pupils Lucian Freud and Maggie Hamlin. As noted, John McNamara was elected Conservative Member of Parliament for Chelmsford in 1935. An interesting thing to note is that his personal assistant as MP was the Soviet spy Guy Burgess, which opens up a whole continuation of intrigue and interest. Interestingly, McNamara would also act as the Secretary of the National Joint Committee for Spanish Relief, a position he would share with Wilfred Roberts, the MP Wilfred Roberts, who was actually Ben Nicholson's brother-in-law. So again, a link there of interest for me. McNamara was killed in Italy in 1944 while serving as a colonel with the 1st London Irish Rifles. Now, I'm sure, as you all know, Hildebrand Gurlitt would notoriously become one of the 4 official dealers appointed by the Nazi Commission for the exploitation of degenerate art to sell confiscated works of art abroad. As has been well documented, the art collection that Gurlitt amassed during this period, totaling 1,400 works, including 300 which had been included in the Degenerate Art exhibition of 1937, was posthumously discovered by German custom officials in the apartment of his son Cornelius in 2010. Okay, thank you very much.